Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, an emergency edition. Well, it's not really an emergency. We kind of knew that we were going to do this, but yeah, it is a spur of the moment.
It's a scheduled emergency podcast.
Yeah, instant reaction, I guess you could say, to the UCF Knights men's basketball team making the NCAA Tournament for the first time in 14 years. I'm Jeff Sharon, and joining me tonight are Brian Murphy, who is stuck in the doldrums of the FedEx Forum in Memphis at the moment, where he's probably the only person in the building at the moment. Is that right, Murph?
That's not correct, Jeffrey. There are at least 3 other scribes here right now, and a massive cleanup crew.
Oh, good. You're not alone. Okay.
So company.
And the cleaning crew might be there for a while cleaning up the confetti. Eric Lopez is here. He's actually on the road back from the Orlando Magic game.
That's right. Big win for the Magic during the playoff chase at the Amway Center, and that's the secondary story. But, yeah, that's the old American, home of the American Conference Championship last year.
And last but far from least, our very special guest tonight, former UCF men's basketball guard, now the analyst for UCF men's basketball on the UCF Knights radio network and UCFKnights.tv. Number 12 in your program, Taylor Young. What's up, TY?
What's up, guys? Closing out an awesome weekend. It's good news to end the weekend. Tonight was special.
Oh, man. I can't imagine what it must feel like for you being an alumnus of the program to see UCF get back to the dance for the first time since 2005. Just as an alum, as a guy who knows these guys and knows Coach Dawkins and is around the program, how does it feel just personally for you to see UCF in the bracket once again?
I think what's been cool outside the obvious of, just the how far we've come type moment that you have is the level of respect that UCF's getting on a national level. And I think you see that in the seeding, even though, the season kind of ended the way it did in Memphis, and that loss is one we'd like to have back, but you see the level of respect that people have for UCF. And it has to do with a lot of stuff. It has to do with the level of respect people have for Coach Dawkins and the job he's done, and also the talent level and really the program that we've been able to build. It's just been year after year, a little bit of a brick by a little bit more. You're laying a foundation for so long. And then, as a fan and as a player, you kind of get tired of laying a foundation. You're kind of like, hey, I'd like some results, or I'd like to get back to the NCAA tournament kind of thing. And, I think that moment tonight just shows you how special it is to get there. I was never able to do it as a player. And so you don't take those moments for granted. I'm super, super happy, for a guy like BJ Taylor and those guys that stick through and stay local and go through everything that you go through as a college athlete. That you get to enjoy one of the coolest parts of it, and that's the NCAA tournament.
It is really cool. Now, we were there. I was at the watch party at Burger U on campus, and Jeremy Brenner was with us. We saw the reaction, and it happened real quick, and we'll get to that in a second. But just to recap what the situation is, in case you don't know, which I don't know why you don't by this point, but UCF is a 9 seed. They are in the East region. They will play the VCU Rams, who are the 8 seed in the East, and they will play on Friday, the 22nd, at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. The winner of that game gets the winner of it's likely going to be the number 1 overall seed, Duke Blue Devils. They will face the winner of either 16-seeded North Dakota State or North Carolina Central, and obviously only one 16 has ever beaten a 1, and that was last year when Virginia went down. But excuse me, to University of Maryland, Baltimore County. But obviously, first things first, you got to get through that first round. VCU is going to be a very tough opponent. We're going to break them down in a second. But what do you think, TY, about the matchup, at least as of how the bracket shook out, where UCF did get the 9 seed? I was a little worried coming in about getting into that 8-9 game because you're facing a number 1 seed, and we know how good Duke is. I mean, I watched them last night in the ACC championship. They are legit, and it's not just Zion Williamson either. They're serious business. But how do you feel about this sort of 4-team pod with Duke against the winner of that 16-16 game, and then UCF facing VCU at least as right? Because it's an interesting matchup if UCF gets to the second round with Johnny Dawkins facing off against Coach K, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's made for TV. I mean, really,
yeah.
I mean, it'll be, mentor and first mentee and Zion and Taco are two of the most unique players to ever play college basketball in reality, right? I mean, and then both teams are really good. I think there's a lot of talent on that floor. Clearly, Duke's the most talented team in the country. But, you also have some pro talent on the UCF side that forces them to be a tough matchup too. And so I think it's really, I wouldn't say if it's ideal that you're going to play the best player, best team in the country if you're able to advance. But I mean, it's pretty awesome that you can know that if you can get a win, you're going to have an amazing experience and a chance to go take down the best team in the country in a made-for-TV matchup. So I mean, that I feel like from a viewership standpoint around the country, that would be a very that would create such a buzz among all these games.
Well, and it's going to be the marquee broadcast team, I would assume, with Jim Nance, possibly with Grant Hill, former Blue Devil, Bill Raftery. I mean, Taylor, you said someone who has played college basketball. I mean, that's what you dream of, right? Is that one shining moment montage video, Jim Nance, you got the marquee people, and you're going to be playing.
Yeah, crazy.
I mean, more people are going to watch UCF basketball Friday night and potentially Sunday than they ever have in the program's history.
It's crazy. And, for Bill Rafferty, a guy like that to call your game. And, I would shoot a floater on purpose just so he had to do, you'd have to, commentate my floater. But, so you'd have to get the floater in at some point. But, yeah, I mean, it is crazy to think that. And I think the timing of it's very unique as well for UCF as a school and athletic program, because people know the name now. People know the brand.
Yeah.
They may not be as familiar with the basketball team, but when you hear UCF, oh, yeah, the football team, great, blah, 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 the national exposure and everything like that. So it's just an explosive time, and I think that when you get the eyes on the product that Coach Dawkins has put his stamp on, with the basketball team and the way these guys defend, my biggest thing, what I'm looking for is, how free are we going to be able to play offensively? Are we going to come out and really be aggressive and put it on teams offensively? Because defensively, you kind of know what you're getting. It's just offensively, I think that'll be the X factor. And if we're able to get an upset and advance, that's what I'm looking for.
What are your thoughts on the 9:40 tip-off? And let's be honest, it'd probably be a little later than that. It never goes on schedule. If anybody that's followed the tournament, from a player standpoint, you're waiting all day. You're the last game of that day. There's going to be 3 other games prior to that. What was a player's mindset? What is that going to be like? And then how a factor that's going to be that you're going to wait all day. You're going to be the last game of the night.
Yeah, and it's the biggest game of your career, right? So it's like, you're pretty antsy regardless. Games start Thursday, so you're going to want to play then. But you also get the full day to really rest. You get the full, the amount of treatment that you're able to get this week and really get your body right to make a run. And then it's just going to be, you're probably going to wake up, you grab some breakfast, you maybe have a couple of team meetings, and then you hopefully get a nap. I always love to take a nap on game days. Don't get as many naps these days as an adult as I did, as a college student. But that was always a tradition, for guys that usually, you get a meal, you get a nap, you wake up, get yourself going, and then, everyone's got their own subtlety as far as a routine. So I don't think it'll be a problem, but it is you're going to be waiting around all day.
9:40 p.m. tip. Do you have enough time to take a second nap?
I still hope so, man. I mean, naps are so crucial. I don't know. I feel like as an athlete, too, the way your schedule is with night games regardless, you just kind of have a different schedule because you want to peak, when you're playing that game, right? So for me, if I was going into that, I'd probably stay up a little bit, later that week to kind of get my body right and get my mind right. So when 9:40 comes, but a lot of it, adrenaline is going to be taken over too. So we talked about it a little bit before the podcast started. It's just about getting these guys as healthy as they can get because everyone's dinged up. Just about every team has got something going on, and so that's a positive to the late tip Friday.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that because obviously the situation with UCF losing in the first or not the first round, but the second round, their first game of the American tournament, and I thought coming in that might have dropped us to a 10 seed, and then you would avoid the 1, but it seems to me like they basically had UCF almost locked into an 8-9 game regardless of what happened because that's where UCF ended up. So is there a real advantage to the fact that UCF got bounced in the tournament early? Because had they made a run, that's, another 24, 48, maybe 72 hours that they would have been playing a game and not resting.
Yeah, and if you go to the championship game, I think the American is always the last game played, correct? Right. Before Selection Sunday.
Yeah.
That one in the Big Ten.
Yeah, you're playing as late. So, it just depends on who you ask. I mean, I think if you're looking downside, you want to have momentum going into the tournament and playing your best basketball. So I think the way they lost in Memphis, I'm sure, leaves a little bit of a, bad taste in their mouth and wanting to get back on that floor pretty quickly to get back in the W column. But they've done so many good things this year, and the way that their schedule was structured and so difficult on the back end, which allowed them the opportunity to really punch their ticket to the NCAA tournament. So that helped. But, man, it's a grind when you're going to play, Houston at home. Then you're going at Houston, you're going to Cincinnati. Then you go up at Temple, right? It's a very emotional game. We've seen how good they can be. And then you play Memphis in Memphis, which traditionally is very, very tough. And so they've had a really, really tough stretch. And I think that prepares them well for the tournament. So I think when you look at this gap of like, okay, man, now we can just flush the season. We punched our ticket. We've been working so hard at this. Let's get healthy and let's go play our very, very best basketball.
We're talking with Taylor Young, analyst for UCF men's basketball on UCFKnights.tv and the UCF radio network. All right, so let me ask you about the VCU Rams out of the A-10. So VCU got bounced in the quarterfinals in the Barclays Center, the A-10 tournament, by the 8 seed Rhode Island. They were the regular season champion of the A-10. And to put it in perspective, UCF was 23-8 this year overall. VCU was 25-7. So fairly similar records, and VCU ended up winning their conference in the regular season, but they lose in the quarterfinals to URI, so they have some extra rest coming in. What can you tell us about VCU from what you've been able to glean on them to this point, Taylor, and what kind of a matchup do they present for UCF in this first round game?
It's going to be a defensive battle. I haven't watched a full game of theirs this year. But it's pretty amazing the story that they've been able to put together. I believe they were picked middle of the pack in their conference, maybe 7th or something like that preseason, and then end up just going bananas and one of the best defensive teams in the country. So, you think about a game like UCF Cincinnati where it's just a bloodbath defensively. It's a lot of all that kind of stuff. UCF has played a lot of elite teams defensively, and they're an elite team defensively. So I think that will be an interesting thing to watch. VCU traditionally will press you, which UCF's seen a lot of looks from a team like Memphis and their conference to be able to handle that type of stuff. So again, what I'm going to look for in those teams that make runs in the NCAA tournament, they put together, like you think about the George Masons, back in the day, and the VCU in 2011. You defend, but you're also able to free yourself offensively to, make big shots when you need to make big shots to really make some noise and upset people. So that's the one thing. If you look at a game like UCF, when they play really, really well offensively, you're like, man, that is a tough out. Like that,
right.
They're a complete team. They got they have a great backcourt. They got a true big man. They got a wing that can do just about anything and shoot it lights out. So when it's working, I really, really like this team against a VCU. And then if it's a defensive battle, UCF's shown that they can win those close ones late. More so now this year, they've won a lot of close games. So that'll be an interesting matchup, but definitely a defensive battle for sure.
Yeah. Their head coach, by the way, VCU, is Mike Rhodes. You might remember, now you referenced this, Taylor. People remember VCU from the run they made to the Final Four under Shaka Smart, who's now at Texas. But this is a VCU Ram team that won. Let's see, I'm actually trying to count it up as I think there was they have a 12 or 13 game winning streak late in the season from late January all the way up until the A10 tournament to finish out the season, and they're 10th in the country in scoring defense. They're only giving up 61 points a game, and they're 6th in field goal percentage defense at 38.4% given up. So you're right, this could be a real defensive battle because UCF is 13th in the nation in field goal percentage defense and 28th in scoring defense. So this is going to be a battle, and it does feel like this could be another one of those classic, very close 8-9 games where it comes down to the final possession. And in that case, and I'm interested to know what you thought about this too, Taylor, is, the last time we talked, I think we all kind of agreed that we kind of hadn't quite yet seen UCF's best overall game as a team yet. And I thought, and believe it or not, I thought even against Houston, that even in that game, UCF, even though they beat the number 6 team in the country, that they still hadn't quite put together a fully complete game. So
SMU?
SMU, yeah. Okay, I'll give you SMU, Brian. Yeah, at home. But even
won by 50.
Well, yeah, I know, but that's also a team that it's also, an SMU team that's really been struggling.
Jeff's a hard grader there, Taylor.
Yeah, I've got a really
paper, and he'll take points away.
I got a tough rubric. Do you think that we still haven't? Do you think that we still could see the best of this team yet in this tournament?
Yeah, so good point about the SMU game, right? You left the arena that night, and you're like, wow. This team is really, really, really good, and I don't want to play them because they're so complete on both sides of the floor when they're efficient offensively. So, I look at a game like that, and if you play like that, man, you're going to have no problem competing with anybody in the country. So yeah, I think there's a lot left to be desired. I think what you're referencing outside of a game like SMU at home is – this team, even when they've gotten some big wins, they didn't play perfect. They did some really good things, but they didn't play perfect. And sometimes offensively, I feel like specifically, I keep going back here because the effort level's always there. The defensive intensity is always there. It's a joy to watch UCF defend. And then offensively, sometimes they can go through lulls where there's just these 4 to 6 minute stretch that they just have a tough time scoring or getting something going. And then they'll have a stretch where they're pounding inside and dominating you, and Taco Fall's dunking on everybody in the arena, right? So it's like, that's what I'm looking for, is to see which team is able to show up offensively. And especially in a neutral site, there's going to be nerves. This is a really big nationally televised game, like you mentioned. So, I really hope that we come with a mentality that is really freeing ourselves up to go compete and have a blast and win the game. And I think they will. I think this NCAA tournament berth thing was probably a monkey on their back really for the last month and a half, 2 months, knowing what's at stake and knowing the at-large bid. And so the minute you punch your ticket, you've kind of been, you're legitimate, right? Now we believe you're good enough to be here, and now you can maybe come get their best performance of the year on Friday. So that's what I just look on the offensive side and say, look, if you play like that SMU game, I mean, you're probably going to beat just about anybody in the country. And it's just offensively whether they can put together those type of stretches or avoid, some of the challenging stretches as far as rhythm offensively.
Right. All right. Taylor Young joining us to break down UCF making the NCAA tournament. T.Y., are you going to make the trip up to Columbia?
I am. I'm working through some things. I got a personal commitment Saturday for a wedding I'm in, and so I'm going to work through some things. But I'm 100% will be at the game Sunday if we are able to get a win, and I'm still working on Friday to see if I can make Friday happen. So we'll see, man. But it's historic, so I'm hoping. For UCF fans that they can make the trip and move some stuff around and make it happen. Cause I know that, that this fan base, when it travels and especially, the basketball fans that have been waiting for a moment like this, it's going to be huge to have a great presence there and support for the team.
All right. Taylor Young, once again, joining us here to break down UCF and VCU and the Knights making the NCAA tournament for the first time in 14 years. And real quick, T.Y., where were you the last time UCF was in the tournament? Because you were still in high school at the time. Is that right?
I was still in high school, man. So, yeah, I believe it was 04-05. So
2005, yeah.
2 years before I got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was 06, 07 was my first year. So, I got to know a lot of those guys, even the ones that graduated just through playing pickup when I first got to UCF. And there were some really good teams, but it's now a fun conversation would be, is this the best UCF basketball team ever? What's that look like? And I think that they make a very, very strong argument that would be the case for sure.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch, and we can't wait to see them Friday night at 9:40 p.m. UCF and VCU. All right, T.Y., we'll let you go. Thanks again, man. Safe travels if you're as you head up to Columbia and balancing around weddings and stuff this time of year, man. It's crazy in the spring, but safe driving, okay?
It sucks being an adult, right? Sucks being an adult. All right.
All right,
guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate you having me on.
All right, thanks, T.Y. I'll talk to you a little bit. All right, we'll be right back, and we'll continue break down UCF's trip to the NCAAs in just a second. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate, then get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back once again to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here. Thanks again to T.Y. Taylor Young for joining us earlier to talk about the Knights making the NCAA tournament. They're in the 8-9 game as a 9 seed. They will play the VCU Rams in the first round in Columbia, South Carolina, Friday night, 9:40 p.m. Winner will likely get the number 1 overall seed, Duke Blue Devils.
Likely
in these. Well, hey. It's a non-zero chance, but because you never know.
If Duke loses, that's the biggest upset in the history of sports, right?
And you get to be there to see it, Murph.
And you get to, that's right, Murph.
Be there to see it.
How great is that?
No,
so
it would be bigger than obviously the Jets and the Colts, or even like
USA, USSR.
Yeah, it would definitely be bigger.
Yeah, or I'm trying to think of some qualifier who won the U.S. Open or something. I don't know.
Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson.
Buster Douglas. There you go. That would be bigger than Buster Douglas?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's neither here nor there. We don't care about any of that. Let's talk about this game right here that's in front of UCF, VCU.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah. Let's get through that first. This is the A-10 champ in the regular season, so this is a good team. They finished 25-7 on the year. I got their team sheet pulled up from the NCAA. They were 2-2 in their quad 1 games. Lost at Virginia by 8, to give you an idea. They beat Texas by 1. They also beat Dayton, and those were, excuse me, were those home games? No, those were away games. And they also...
Well, they won at Texas. I know they won at Texas.
Yeah, they won
that
at...
was one of their...
Yep. And interestingly enough, they beat their old coach, Shaka Smart.
Shaka Smart.
Right.
60 to St. John's by a point. Beat Temple, by the way. Common opponent, 57-51.
Also beat Wichita State.
And they did also beat Wichita State and beat them pretty bad too at home, 70-54.
The Temple game was on a neutral court, so
yeah, that's true. They what else did they have? They also lost to Davidson. That was their other Q1 game. They got bounced in their first game of the conference tournament. They lost to Rhode Island, third time that they actually played. They actually lost to Rhode Island twice this year, but they come in also well rested, and they weren't really a bubble team. It was expected that obviously it was expected to get in as the conference regular season champ, but I don't know. Murph, I'll start with you. What do you make of this matchup, and what is it going to be the defensive battle that TY was telling us he thought it would be?
Yeah, probably. I mean, like you guys talked about with TY, VCU ranks among the top 10 in the nation in defensive 2-point and 3-point defense. I think they're in the top 10 in effective field goal percentage. Like, you can throw all these defensive stats out, and they create a lot of steals.
Mm-hmm.
So they're defensively really strong. They do not shoot it well at all. They're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the nation. They're kind of like UCF, but with a little faster tempo. They kind of play a little bit more of pace. All of that is to say that it's not surprising where UCF is slotted. It was so funny when Duke was revealed as the overall number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, a Memphis writer, said, "So where do you think UCF's going to be?" And I said, "Right in the next pod." And right in the next pod in about 30 seconds. And sure enough, there they were. And really, I have not really seen much of the bracket because I've been kind of working since then, so I really don't know what else is going on. But
don't worry, we've got you covered.
Yeah, I appreciate that, guys. I think one of the major issues of this game, obviously, is what's the status of Marcus Evans, the lead guard for VCU? In that game against Rhode Island, he went down badly, and it looked awful. He was holding his left knee. He was down for about 5 minutes. He actually came back on the bench. They diagnosed him with a hyperextended left knee and a deep bone bruise.
Ouch.
Structurally, they say he's fine, so nothing is torn. But deep bone bruises don't heal quickly, and so they have tentatively said he's expected to be back for the tournament, but I think it's questionable. And he is their leading scorer. He really is their leader. He's a junior, and this is a team that really only has one senior in its major rotation.
Mm-hmm.
VCU is very deep. They play 9 guys at least 15 minutes a night, but only one of them is a senior, and so Marcus at 13 points a game is their leading scorer. Otherwise, there's Dariante Jenkins, who's kind of a lengthy sort of stretch guard forward shooter. Marco Santos Silva is their big man. He's averaging 10 and 7. I mean, he's a big man at 6'7", I believe. So there's a size advantage for UCF, obviously. But if Marcus Evans is compromised in any way, it's too bad. But it'd be a huge uplift for UCF, at least offensively, because really, without him, VCU's offense it's worse than it already is.
Eric, how do you see this breaking down?
Well, Murph hit it. They're 9 deep. They're a good defensive team. What's interesting, they're not really big. You look at their leading rebounder is Marcus Santos Silva. He's about 6'7". Corey Douglas, who's a transfer out of Rice, is 6'8". So I think UCF's got a size advantage here, Murph, and guys. And I think one of the keys here, UCF's got to win the boards. I think possessions are going to be really a premium here. It's very valuable. The thing that concerns me here, as Murph brought it up, if VCU they like to turn you over, and I think UCF at times when they have struggled offensively, and as Taylor mentioned, have their droughts. Sometimes they kind of get a little too turn the ball over a little bit too much there, and I think that's going to be very interesting to see in that regard. I think that's going to be, can UCF dominate the boards? And I would expect VCU to try to stretch out Taco. And it'll be interesting how VCU looks at Taco, because if you've followed the last couple of years on the broadcast, the opponents always talk about how it's one thing to prepare for Taco in practice, but when you see it live in person, it is a bit of an adjustment for VCU. So it's a very intriguing matchup from that standpoint. I really do, because both teams, you're right, have question marks from the perimeter. And I think it's going to come down to which defense can turn the other over. And I think rebounding, second chances, because you're not going to get a clean look against VCU. And I think Terrell Allen, Murph, is a big factor. He's got to play well and run that offense. Him and BJ, you got to run that offense and can't be sloppy with the basketball. And all of a sudden you're down to 8 in the shot clock and you have no idea what you're doing with your offense. That's going to be, I think, a key factor in this game.
Yeah, and because we see it a lot, and you saw it today. Actually, if you watch the AAC title game with Cincinnati and Houston, sometimes your shots don't fall. Houston is a great shooting team who couldn't hit the side of a barn today. I think they shot 28%. Sometimes that happens. So you're not always going to be on your best shooting night, but that doesn't mean you can facilitate. That doesn't mean you can't facilitate offense by getting the ball inside of the mid range, getting into the paint, and sort of operating from there. And obviously Terrell and BJ can do that. And so Colin Smith, Taco's got to get position on the block, and they can do that. And if Aubrey is at least proficient and at least good enough to be average as a shooter in this game, that would be gigantic, because I think it's really, I think his performance is really what's most critical. Is I think they're going to be able to score inside, but I really think the extra edge is how much can they get from the perimeter, how much do they get from Dayon Griffin, and Aubrey, and so that'll be something to watch. Also, to go back on the point that was brought up, VCU is I would say average rebounding. Overall, I think they're like 7th in rebounding margin.
Yeah.
In the A10, they're better on the offensive glass than the defensive glass, but it's not like a major difference. We've seen teams that, even though they don't have size, are really good rebounding teams, like Houston. But with VCU, they are pretty average. UCF, does have a size advantage there, and this is a team that they can sort of force their will on.
Yeah.
By the way, there's one guy on the UCF roster that has played VCU. Colin Smith.
That would be. Yeah, Colin Smith in the A10.
He played him a couple years ago. In fact, I'm looking at the box scores. He had 10 points and 8 rebounds in one of their losses. They got blown out in one of the games, but then the other game was like a 1-point ball game. So Colin could be an X factor here in this game. I mean, you talk about size. I think UCF's got to win with size, and Colin has played VCU. He got 30 minutes in that one of those games. I think that's where, the odds of, finding a player that's played against him is very unique. So I'm very curious, Murph, and I'm sure you'll talk as you get media availability throughout the week. That'll be an interesting storyline with Colin Smith having played VCU back when he was at GW.
Yeah, and I do think that the other advantage that it bodes for UCF from that perspective is when I look at VCU's defensive statistics, and like you were mentioning, Murph, the categories that they seem to lead everything in were not related to front court players. They are a fairly, average to above average rebounding team, but they were tops in the A10 in steals, tops in turnover margin, tops in turnovers forced, and that tells me that steals per game and a 3-point field goal percentage defense. That tells me that the real catalyst for their defense is the backcourt. So it's going to be up to BJ Taylor and, like you said, Eric, Terrell Allen to really have a good game against VCU if the Knights are going to have success. And it also opens up some opportunities for the front court players as well. And I do think Colin is going to be key to that. Let me ask. That
backcourt defense is, again, headed by Marcus Evans, who leads the team in steals. His injury really flips this game either way, whether he's going to be good enough to go or not. And again, he's got maybe a week. He's got a week to get over a deep bone bruise, which is not a lot of time.
Yeah, no, I know, but
and that's significant with the backcourt matchup. Them defending Aubrey and BJ is a factor. I mean, one of the things when UCF has struggled, and we saw that in the Memphis game, even in the tournament. I mean, Aubrey didn't get a lot of shots out, and that's going to be interesting to see the ball defender. There's a lot of intriguing matchups. This is one of the better first round matchups of the entire tournament, And, it's going to have a marquee spotlight here. I mean, This is what it's about. It's about the best of the best. And, we've gone back and forth on the seedings, 8, 9, 7, 10. These teams are all good. I mean, I don't care who you are, 7 to 10, they're all about the same. And if you don't show up to play, you're going to get beat. I don't care what seed you are.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because in the final net rankings, UCF ended up 30th. VCU, coincidentally, is 34th. How do you guys feel? Murph, I want to start with you. How do you guys feel about where UCF landed? Not just from the fact that they're in the 8-9 game, but the fact that they're in the same pod as Duke, the number 1 overall seed. The fact that I think they were the 34th ranked seed of the teams in the tournament. And also from the fact that they're playing in Columbia, South Carolina. Granted, it's not Jacksonville, where I think a lot of people were hoping UCF would go, but still in the Southeast. They're in Columbia, South Carolina, playing in that late game. I mean, how do you feel about where they landed in the bracket, Murph?
I feel great. I'm totally good with it because because
you get to drive.
Because I don't have to fly anywhere. That's awesome. I get to drive 7 hours and it's going to be way easy.
Well, you could drive to San Jose, but you'd have to leave tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to do that, Jeffrey. So, and the seeding was not surprising. I thought they'd drop a little bit after the loss to Memphis, and I think the projections kind of bared that out over the last couple of days. And talked to Mike O'Donnell, who is here today, obviously, because he's one of the faces for the AAC's coverage of this tournament. And I asked him what he thought was going to happen today, and he said 9, and I agreed. And I thought Jacksonville was never feasible. They were never going to give UCF as a 9 seed that kind of home court advantage. But, I expected them to be on that 8-9 line, and they would probably keep them in the Southeast. And that probably meant Duke or, it could have been Duke or Virginia or something like that. But regardless, they were going to be in that area. And so considering what I expected, which was they're going to be on the 9 and that's what it's going to be, it kind of played out the best I could have hoped for, both for me personally and the matchup. Because again, even if UCF wins this game, all right, so they might get completely trucked by Duke, but you still get to play Duke, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well,
amen to that.
Well, obviously, me. I'm always like, just let's get through that first one. And,
sure.
But they're all tough. But Murph's point. By the way, I did call this Sunday morning. And I don't care what
absolutely did.
I did call this, and I don't care what any committee member says. They can talk all they want about, we don't look for unique matchups. We seed them, and it just so happens to play out that way.
Whatever.
Buffoonery, nonsense. Otherwise, you think it's a coincidence that Richard Pitino in Minnesota are going to play Louisville? What, did that just happen to be a coincidence? Yeah, right.
And in this case, Johnny Dawkins against Coach K, possibly.
Against Coach K in that matchup. Yeah.
And you know who the athletics director at Duke is?
That's right, Danny White's dad.
Danny White's father.
Yeah.
Kevin White.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hey now.
Well then.
It's just coincidence. So I wasn't surprised. I had a feeling this was coming. I just had a feeling.
Thanks for great television.
The only thing that I missed that was disappointing that would have even made this even much more juicier. It would have been if they would have paired him up with Iowa, and you would have had Kirk Sparrow on the opposite side. That would have been just unbelievable. But VCU is very good, and under the circumstances, I think that's about right. I don't think you could say, well, they should have been higher seed or not. I think that's about right, considering what their season was as a body of work. And look, they're going to be a marquee team. If they get past VCU, which is a big if, because I think it's a toss-up game. I think it's a heck of a game. But if you get a chance to get past that game, I understand it's Duke and you're a huge underdog, but there's going to be so many eyeballs on that game. And if you did the impossible, if you knocked off UCF, not only would that be the greatest UCF
Or you mean if you knocked off Duke, rather?
Right. What did I say?
You said if you knocked off UCF.
Well, that would have been interesting in itself, how you knock each other. But if you knock off Duke, if you do the impossible, you will be remembered forever, for 20 to 30 years from now. They'll be talking about that game. And I would go a step further. It would not only be the most incredible achievement in UCF basketball history, greatest moment. It would be the greatest moment in UCF athletics history, period. You're going to go against that.
It would be up there.
It's number one. If they pulled off a win against Duke. This is a Duke team that's going to be very memorable, that arguably has on its roster the guy that's going to be the face of basketball for the next decade in Zion Williamson. That is remarkable. Not to mention there's 2 other lottery picks on this team. With
perhaps three other lottery picks. With Trey Jones.
With arguably the greatest college basketball coach, if not basketball coach, period, in the history of the sport, in Coach K. This is significant. This is significant on a lot of levels if they get that opportunity. And to me, if I'm UCF, this is fun. There's no pressure. There's fun. You got a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, which you've grown up with. You're playing a great team in VCU, and then you hopefully get that first ever program win. And if you do that, you get to play Duke and play David and Goliath. I mean, this is what it's about. It's, as Murph likes to say, this is sports.
Easy. I want to talk about the American as a whole real quick. So UCF gets in as a 9, playing against VCU. Cincinnati, fresh off winning the conference tournament, they will play Iowa in the 7-10. Cincy's the 7. The opposite side of them is Tennessee and Colgate in the 2-15.
Frankie coaches there, Fran McCaffrey and Mick Cronin there.
Yep. What else? Houston, having lost today, like you said earlier, Murph, they're a 3 seed. They will play Georgia State, our old ASUN conference mates, in the 3-14, and Temple, it turns out, did sneak in. They are in the play-in game for Tuesday night against Belmont, another former UCF conference mate from the A Sundays. So in that 11 versus 11 game on True TV on March the 19th. So 4 bids for the American. I think if you're Mike Oresco, you got to be really happy with that. No, Murph?
Absolutely. It was great to see Temple get in. Really thought they were on the bubble, and really thought they were like just on like the precipice of the bubble. And sure enough,
turns out they were.
Yeah, sure enough, yeah. And then not only that, but you also get Memphis and Wichita State into the NIT. So half the league is playing in major postseason national tournaments, and that's big. Now, hilariously, on the CBS broadcast, they listed the number of power conference teams to non-power conference teams, I believe, in the tournament for like the last 6 years, and they listed here are the Power 6 conferences, and they listed 6 conferences, and not one of them was the American. One was the Pac-12, and the other one was the Big East. Both of which AAC has as many bids as the Big East, I believe, and
Oresco would like a word, obviously.
and more than the Pac-12. So it was kind of weird, but again, the AAC is kind of being looked down upon again. It's fine, but again, it was a big day for the AAC to get half their league into tournaments and to get 4 into the NCAA's. It's the best you could have hoped for after yesterday, and they got it.
So let me ask you.
Especially when I talked to Mike Oresco at the football game against Cincinnati, I mean, his tone was, hey, I think we're a good league, but it's really a transition year. We're really going to be good in a year or two. Well, guess what? They're ahead of schedule.
Well, yeah.
4 teams. It's a great success with a team in Houston that perhaps you hope can make a deep run. Cincinnati, the only thing that was disappointing, I thought 7 seed, they win the American Conference Tournament. It just shows you, in my opinion, that the committee doesn't even pay attention to the tournament at the last day. It seems to me like they were going to be a 7 seed no matter what happened.
That was surprising, because I said right after that game, that's a kind of game that can bolt you up a full seed line. Remember, UCF basically went up 2 seed lines after they won at Houston.
Right.
So that's a kind of game in a conference tournament that can move your seed line, and Cincinnati stays at a 7. That seems like the committee had already made its choice of where to put Cincinnati regardless of the result, and it seemed wrong.
So
I agree.
So let me ask you this then. Do we think that how many American teams could possibly make it to the second weekend? I know obviously we think that Houston could since they're a 3 seed, but could we see Cincinnati getting there? Could we see I'm not even going to talk about UCF because, obviously that would require them getting past Duke, and we're not going to go there yet, but but what about, say, Temple? Could they get through that that East Region 11-11. They have to play, obviously, the extra game, but in that 11 matchup, they would play, assuming they get through Belmont, they would get Maryland, and then either LSU or Yale. But could we see more than one American team making it to the second weekend?
No.
No? All right. What do you think, Eric?
No.
I mean, I'm looking at the bracket right now.
I wouldn't put it past Cincinnati. I know they would they would likely get Tennessee in the second round, but you don't think Cincinnati would have a shot against Tennessee with their defense?
Yeah, they would have a shot. Are you asking me if I would take Cincinnati over Tennessee? Probably not. I mean, I just think inside, like, there's just too much of Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield. Like Cincinnati wants to play tough, and Tennessee wants to play tougher. They're really playing their own. They're really playing the same game, and so I think Tennessee is just they just bully you. And plus, their guards like Jordan Bone who's really underrated. So they can beat you both ways. Whereas Cincinnati, as we saw today, kind of needs Jaron Cumberland to carry.
Right. All right.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Murph on that. I think that's a tough draw there, and I think Temple can beat Maryland. The problem is I don't know if they can beat Belmont. I think Belmont's really good. That's a toss-up
I
game,
agree with that.
Right? I mean, I think the winner, whoever wins the Temple Belmont game, I think beats Maryland and gets to the Sweet 16. And look, at that point, I think it's wide open because I think LSU is vulnerable with the interim coach and with everything they've gone through. And I think, again, I cannot underestimate what a phenomenal job, by the way, they did. I love the Louisville-Minnesota matchup, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, I think Temple, if they can get past Belmont, has a chance to make a run in Fran Duffy's swan song. But again, I don't know if they can get past Belmont. That's the tricky part about that. And as far as Houston, and Murph, you brought this up in the last episode. So Houston plays today in the championship game. Yeah. Now they're flying out. I don't know if they're flying out tonight, if they flew out tonight, or flying out Monday.
Sure, they're
whatever.
gone.
Yeah, they're probably gone. They got to come back and play Thursday, right? Is that when they're
Friday?
That's when
they're Friday too, the 22nd.
Okay, so they did get a Friday. Okay, well that helps.
They did get an extra day. Yeah.
I was definitely worried about that. I didn't see that in the schedule. But, Georgia State is a frisky team right off the bat. So, if Houston doesn't shoot the ball like Murph said, they could have some tricky stuff with Georgia State. And then who are they getting if they were to get past Georgia State in the 6-11? They would get Iowa State, Ohio State. I mean, which Iowa State team's going to show up? I have no idea. That's the thing.
No idea.
You tell me which Cyclone team's going to show up, and I'll tell you if it's result or not. The problem with Houston is they can get to the Sweet 16. I just don't see them beating Kentucky in the Sweet 16. So they would need some help, I think, at that point. Not that Kentucky's invincible, but that's a tricky matchup for Houston. They would have to play at a high level there. And the problem is if they were to get past Kentucky, I don't think they have a shot against North Carolina because North Carolina loves to run the ball. I don't think they can match up. But I think Sweet 16 is probably for Houston's bet. I think Houston and Temple maybe are your best shots at the second weekend.
And I will add, too, for Houston, Corey Davis, it was admitted after the game by Kelvin Sampson. Corey Davis, their basically lead scorer and sharpshooting guard, has a hip strain. So it doesn't sound like it's a minor thing. Actually, it was something that Corey really bothered him today. He really struggled, and Kelvin really reduced his minutes and basically told him to sit out good portions of the second half to sort of rest the injury. And so it's another major injury to watch for Houston.
Yeah. All right. So we'll have a link to the full bracket on we'll have it in the show notes here as well, so you can take a look at it. But all right, stick around. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you, talking about UCF going to the NCAA Tournament for the first time in 14 years. Overall, what do we think about the NCAA field as of right now? Do we have any? Do you guys have? I mean, I always have an open mind on these things because at the end of the day, in 3 weeks, no one's going to really care about who got left out and all that. But how do you guys think that they did putting the bracket together this year? I thought that, at least in terms of the teams from the American, I agree with what you said about Cincinnati getting the 7. I mean, you could have flipped them with Villanova in the 6, having if they had won the game, but obviously and they did, and then they kept them at a 7. But overall, I think the bracket was pretty was pretty fair. I'm actually thrilled for one particular thing. Number one, UCF doesn't have to play Syracuse in the first round because Syracuse is also in an 8-9 game. They are where's that side? They're on the Gonzaga
that's out
side.
West with
that's
Gonzaga,
out west,
yeah.
and they're playing Baylor in the first round. And I also wanted to go ahead, Erica. What did you think about the whole thing?
The thing that's exciting is UCF got in easily. It wasn't like, hey, they're in the playing game. Hey, they were one of the last four. They were clearly in. And I think that's my biggest takeaway for this program. It's the first time in the history of this program they made it as an at-large. So that's my takeaway from there. The committee did a pretty good job. I was surprised that St. John's got in. I thought TCU would get in, but I think part of that is I think TCU is involved in the FBI stuff, and I think there's some political stuff there that probably left them out. Be that
Ooh,
as it may.
hot take there from Eric Lopez. All right, carry on.
It's me. It's just look at the history. The other issue I have, I don't understand how Michigan State got placed with Duke as a 2, considering Michigan State's a 6 seed. I would have put Michigan State actually as a 1 seed over Gonzaga.
Michigan State was. You mean Michigan State was the number 6 overall seed?
Correct,
right.
but yet
Yeah.
they're placed with Duke, right? Like I don't get that. I actually think Jeff Syracuse is going to beat Gonzaga in the second round, and I think Syracuse is going to make another.
I'm glad you think that.
I think because they play zone and they're athletic, and it's funny because Baylor plays a zone too. So if you love zones, Syracuse Baylor is your game.
Yeah, and I will say we're getting way off course, but Gonzaga does struggle to shoot it. Sometimes Zach Norvell is good. Sometimes Zach Norvell is awful.
First team to 40 wins.
If you want to talk about from a UCF standpoint, what would have been the best route to get to the Sweet 16? I actually would have gone. I wish they would have played Gonzaga. The problem is, and Jeff, you might be more the expert. I think Syracuse would have been a bad matchup for UCF because of that zone. We've seen UCF struggle against the zone. So, that's the way the sport works. Sometimes you get a good first round matchup and a bad second round. Sometimes you get a good bad first round, but you might have a good. The bottom line is seeds, whatever you can nitpick and all that, but you just got to play well. And if UCF plays well, they'll have a chance to win against VCU. And if they don't, they're going to get beat. And it's as simple as that.
What do you think, Murph?
I agreed with the teams that were not in the tournament. I'm totally great with Indiana not getting in and Texas not getting in and NC State not getting in. I know there's some tears shed for UNC Greensboro, but I thought generally that's the thing we go to most is who got snubbed. And I didn't really think there was a lot of people that got snubbed here. And I think that's a successful bracket.
I never have a problem with Texas getting snubbed out of anything, but go ahead.
Well, it's what we talked about, right? What would you rather see? You would rather see a team like Belmont, whom as good, no matter how good they are a mid-major team. You'd rather see them play the big boys. Now they got to get through Temple first, and it's kind of a big boy, but not really. But you would rather see that than NC State or Indiana. You absolutely would. I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they rewarded Belmont for a really, really, really exceptional season, even though they didn't have the quality wins on their schedule because they didn't have the chances to get those kind of quality wins. They rewarded them for winning, period.
Right.
Preach, brother, preach.
Before we go, I do want to pour one out real quick for Fairleigh Dickinson University. It's located in beautiful Madison, New Jersey. A school with which I'm familiar because the Giants used to have their training camp there, and I used to actually go there to watch the Giants at Fairleigh Dickinson. It has some of the funnier nicknames for schools. They're actually in one of the 16-16 playing games. In fact, I think they're in the first game. Is that right? Yeah, they're in the very first game against Prairie View. Fairleigh Dickinson, they used to call it, my father used to tell me they used to call it Funkadoo U in the 70s. So there's that. If you, I know this is way off track, but people in New Jersey also used to call it Fairly Ridiculous. But they're in the tournament. And coincidentally, they're also called the Knights. So I'm rooting for the Knights, and I'm rooting for the Knights. I'm with you, Murph. I had no problem. I mean, a little sad for UNC Greensboro, but in the end, I think they got the bracket right. And I'm also with you, Eric, in that I would have loved to have seen, an easier path for UCF to get to the second weekend. But then again, here we are, complaining about that when UCF has never won an NCAA tournament game.
It's been 14 years. It's fine.
Never been in the tournament in a decade and a half, and has never won an NCAA tournament game.
Right.
And getting the first at large bid in school history, and you get the chance against a VCU team that's very good that you want to measure yourself up against. And then, like you said, Eric, taking the big stage, likely against, if they get through VCU, playing on the big stage once again against Duke. And how about UCF this year? Like Taylor was telling us earlier, we talked about the big stage for football. Saturday night, college game day, and playing Cincinnati with Fowler and Herb Street on ABC national television in prime time in football season. And then here in the NCAA tournament, when the bulk of the country begins to start paying attention to college basketball, you very well could see UCF playing against Zion Williamson and Coach K and Duke in a primetime game in the second round on the weekend. So,
you're probably getting Bill Raftery to call your game, and I can see it now. And all right, Jim,
UCF, by the way, you are getting Bill
you
Raftery.
are getting Raftery.
It's official beautifuls. That's the marquee team. Tracy Wolfson. That's gonna be Johnny Dawkins. That's the, it's laughable. It's some of the idiots out there that just enjoy complaining. People criticizing Johnny Dawkins is ridiculous to me. What this guy has brought to the program, forget the on-the-court accomplishments, but off the court, this guy has brought instant credibility to this program. And you saw it
and he doesn't even have a team that's full of his own recruits yet.
Correct. You got a Jay Billis hanging out with him on UCF's sidelines during a marquee game. You got, you're going to have here Grant Hill probably talking about Johnny Dawkins. They're going to be talking about the program, and you're going to have a moment here. I cannot wait when UCF hopefully. Well, it's not going to happen because UCF has not lost a tip in like 2 years, right, Murph? So unfortunately, we won't get to hear Murph say UCF coming out in Miniman.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a violation, but that's going to be awesome. And it's funny. Me and Murph were in Amway Center last year, and we're like, man, there's Jim Nance. This is Jim Nance. And I got to meet Jim Nance, by the way, and so did Murph.
Oh, yeah.
Murph,
and then Elo hands me his phone and go, Brian, take a picture of me and Jim Nance. And that's his Facebook profile.
So that's how you got that profile.
That's his Twitter profile now, by the way, guys.
Uh-huh.
That picture that's on Elo's Twitter profile, that's my photography work.
So, Murph,
A+, Pulitzer level.
You've got an in with Nance. You could just say, "Hey, I met you in the American Conference. That weirdo you took the photo of that weirdo guy. I'm the guy in the wheelchair. It's unbelievable."
I want to say this: the most important part of all of this isn't the game against the VCU or the game against Duke. It's this right now. It's Sunday night. It's Monday. It's Tuesday. It's Wednesday. It's Thursday. It is the ability that you are in the tournament for the first time in almost 15 years. There are many classes of UCF athletes who have come and gone and have not made it to this stage. It is hard to get here. Enjoy this. Enjoy people talking about UCF tonight. Obviously, by the time you're listening to this, Bracketology on ESPN's already aired. CBS Sports Network has already had their 3-hour show on. And then that'll keep people keep going throughout the entire week. Enjoy this ride and this 4 or 5 days before the game start, because then it ends abruptly. It ends abruptly and suddenly and way too soon for every team but one.
Right.
So don't worry about the games and the matchups. Really, don't listen to this podcast at all, because we just talked about things that don't matter. What does matter
And on that note,
what does matter is that you're in, and you should celebrate this, period.
Well, we're going to celebrate it here.
By the way, Murph's head's spinning everywhere right now because he's figuring out how to get to South Carolina. And he's actually, probably him and Mark Daniels right now are figuring out, can I be at baseball against East Carolina and at basketball? How am I going to pull that off?
You guys.
If UCF loses on Friday night, obviously if they win, then I can't go anywhere. But if they lose on Friday night to VCU, do I dare drive out to Greenville, North Carolina, 4 hours away to watch?
Stop acting like you don't know the answer to that. You know already. If you ask,
no.
ECU, man, one of the preseason favorites for the conference.
Hey, we got momentum. We got momentum. As I texted Murph, we got momentum because baseball just took care of VCU 2 out of 3. All right, so we got momentum.
That's right. Yeah. All right.
But no, listen, Murph's right. Enjoy this. This is awesome. This is 14 years. Put it in perspective. I had never been to a softball game the last time UCF men's basketball made the NCAA tournament. I've called now softball for like 12, 13 years going. I had been to like literally no softball games. Jeff, you were still what? You weren't even in town. What were you doing in 2005? Were you at Syracuse in 2005?
No, at 2005 I was a senior. It was actually one of the last things I did as a UCF student was call the ASUN championship game against Gardner-Webb that pushed UCF into the NCAA championships. I didn't get to go to the game that they lost to UConn, but 77-71. But to give you a little bit of perspective, UCF actually sent out a quick little highlight video from that game in 2005. Who was on that UConn roster? Well, Charlie Villanueva was on that UConn roster. A young player by the name of Rudy Gay was probably their most explosive scorer that year, and UCF pushed them. UCF was a 15 seed that year, pushed them about as far as they could go, and lost by 6 to UConn. UConn had a big lead at the half, and UCF really chipped into it, but came up short. It's
because Gary Johnson was on fire.
Gary Johnson hit something like 8 or 9 threes in that game. He played the game of his life in the final game of his career, and of course, remember that was the second of 2 consecutive trips to the NCAAs for UCF, because in 2004 they were a 14 seed and played Pitt.
Yep.
And played Pitt down to the wire. The final score
won
was
that game.
Easily could have won the game. And I remember Rob Ross hitting a 3 that put UCF up by 6, I think, in the second half. And then Pitt made a run, and they took a lead, and then they kind of pushed the lead out to 9 when the game was basically already decided. But that was another close game. There have been the first 2 trips in 94 and 96. UCF was a 16 seed. They got bombed by Glenn Robinson and Purdue. They got bombed by Marcus Camby and UMass.
They always play top-notch NBA lottery guys.
Yeah, I know. But those last 2 trips, it felt like, oh man, we are just so close. We're so much closer than anyone thinks we are. And now to be in the tournament in a 9-8 game against VCU, this is exciting. I'm going to enjoy this. And believe it or not, I still have a piece of the net that Gary Johnson cut down at the Curb Event Center on the campus at Belmont, and handed to me, and that's a very special token memento, and I'm hoping to have that with me on Friday as I'm watching the game as a little good luck charm. So,
by the way, I got 2 quirky stats for you on that. You bring that up.
Okay.
You mentioned that 2004 Pittsburgh game. The head coach at Pittsburgh then was
Jamie Dixon.
It was Jamie Dixon, right?
That's
or
right.
Is it Ben Howland? Yeah,
wait,
okay.
was it? Was it? I think it. I think Dixon had just taken over for Ben Howland.
Ben Howland.
Right. I'm going to verify that, actually. The reason I bring that up because Ben Howland is now at Mississippi State. The young student for UCF that went up to that game, Jeffrey knows very well. He was his best man at the wedding, or one of his best men at the wedding. I'll just leave it as that, so we avoid controversy.
It was Jamie Dixon, by the way. That was Jamie Dixon's second season at Pitt.
Yeah.
Correct. But Matt Dunaway went up there, right?
That's
Jeffrey
right.
went up to that game for the Pitt game, and of course, when the bracket came out, and I find UCF was announced, the next team that was announced was Mississippi State as a 5 seed, where Matt Dunaway now is a media relations person for men's basketball with Ben Howland.
Matty D.
Kind of weird. Yeah, isn't that weird, though?
It's a small world, man.
And he also 2005, a couple other notes. The Chicago White Sox would go on to win the World Series. Ironically, the Red Sox were going to defend their World Series after winning their first World Series title, which is kind of spooky.
We're going to hang up on you now.
The New England Patriots had just won the Super Bowl, so that's kind of spooky.
Oh, God.
And LeBron James missed the playoffs would be for the last time up until this year.
Yay.
It's been a long time.
Spooky.
I will add that you don't know when this team will ever get back to the tournament. You can say that this lays the groundwork for the future and whatever, but you just don't know. And this team is senior. This UCF team is very senior laden, and so all these guys are gone after this year. It's kind of a rebuild year next year. You don't know what the future holds. So again, just seize the moment and enjoy this moment, because again, it could be another 15 years. This program is not Duke or Carolina or even Syracuse. So just enjoy this.
I know I'm going to enjoy it, and it's going to be fun. I mean, I always look forward to those first 2 days, man. It's just basketball wall to wall, and it'll be fun seeing UCF on CBS to close out that first round. And who knows, maybe we'll see them get to the second round and win a game in the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. All right, real quick, as we wrap up, let us not forget about the UCF women's basketball team. They find out where they go in the bracket tomorrow. The women's basketball selection show is on Monday night. They will be at the Mellow Mushroom near the corner of Alafaya and Colonial for that selection show, which I believe also starts at 6. 7 o'clock. Okay, got you. Thank you, on ESPN. So if you want to head on out, have a little meatless Monday with the and grab some pizza with the UCF women's basketball team. They could really use your support out there as well as they get ready to go to the NCAA tournament for the first time in since 2011, and they have never gotten an at-large bid before either. So so that should be a lot of fun to see how they to see where they end up in that as well. So once again, as we finish up, UCF is going to play VCU on Friday night. We will have a ton of stuff for you on Black and Gold Banneret. This entire week we'll be breaking down VCU. We'll be looking back at some of the previous UCF teams. We will have another podcast later this week. We're working on guests for that one where we recap all the sports, and we'll just set the scene for you for Friday as well. I'm also glad that's why they put the game on Friday, because we get a full 24 hours out of the podcast before we play. But and forgive me for my voice, because it's not that I was yelling earlier.
Tonight, Jeff.
But
it's an emotional day, right?
Well, no, I've just been sick all freaking week. And the pollen is just absolutely killing me right now. But this is going to be fun, guys. I'll say I'm not going to put us on the spot and making any predictions at all. I'm going to wait until Thursday for that, or Wednesday night. But
no, I'm taking Murph's advice, man. I'm enjoying this. I'm not making picks. Yeah. I'm excited because I have.
I'm not even going to fill out. I tell you, I'm not even going to fill out a bracket.
Well, let's not get crazy now.
Yeah, that's stupid. What are you doing? Do you like sports?
Never mind. Maybe
let's not get carried away. I'm staring at my 2005 UCF NCAA tournament shirt, the March to the Arch, St. Louis.
There you go.
I'm looking forward to updating that gear.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. What do you think? What do you guys want to do? You guys want to do like an open fan bracket challenge somewhere? Invite some of our esteemed podcast listeners and readers.
Beat Murph.
Yeah, we'll call it hashtag Beat Murph. That's.
Yeah, I'm good. I fly home Monday morning and probably hit back on the road on Wednesday. So it's gonna be great.
This will be good. Well, I mean,
by the way, we have a spread.
Oh, we have late breaking news. We've got a number. What do we got?
Early spread, according to, again, this is for entertainment purposes, but some of the most sites have VCU as a 1-point favorite.
That's basically a coin flip.
Ken Palm and Torvik both have VCU as a 55% chance of winning the game. So again, it's an 8-9 toss-up. Wow, what a shock!
Essentially a coin flip.
Over under 125, Murph. 125.
Yeah. I think I'm going over that.
Yeah. All right.
That's the line.
So that'll be all right. So this will be fun. So stay with us at UCF_Banneret for all the latest on Twitter. Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez Elo, Spokes_Murphy. I also want to send a big thank you to Jeremy Brenner for being with us earlier today for the
heck of a job, boys. You guys did a heck of a job.
That was a lot of fun. We had to break that thing down, and then as soon as we signed up, we had to run outside and get the sound from the players, because Dan brought everybody outside over by that basketball court across the street from Burger U.
Oh yeah.
And we had to like run out there real quick in order to get everybody. But it's just been a blast. It's great having UCF back in the NCAA tournament for the first time in a decade and a half. So I'm looking forward to it, and I know you are too. So for all of us at Black and Gold Banneret, for Eric Lopez and Brian Murphy, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, and let's say it out loud, boys. UCF is going to the dance.
One shiny moment, y'all. Hello, friends.
Let's do this. We'll catch y'all later in the week.